There is a person in your life right now who doesn't argue, doesn't explain themselves, doesn't rush to fill silence. And something about that terrifies you. Not them, the silence itself. Because silence, in a world addicted to noise, is the most threatening thing a human being can carry. You've been taught your whole life that confidence announces itself. That power speaks first. That certainty needs witnesses. So when you encounter someone who seems completely unbothered by whether you approve of them, something ancient and ugly activates inside you. You call them cold, arrogant, distant. You tell yourself they're broken. You do everything in your power to crack them open, to get a reaction, to make them need something from you. And when it doesn't work, the hatred deepens, because their peace has just exposed your chaos. This is not a video about being calm. This is a video about what happens when a human being stops performing, and why the world punishes them for it. Laozi understood something about power that most people spend their entire lives running away from. He said the highest good is like water. Water doesn't compete. It doesn't fight for recognition. It doesn't explain why it's necessary. It simply moves where nothing else wants to go, and over time, it carves through stone. Not with aggression, with patience, with indifference to resistance, and that terrifies anyone who only understands power as force. Think about the people who have unsettled you most in your life. Not the loudest ones, the quiet ones, the ones who looked at you without flinching, the ones who didn't need your validation, the ones who let silence breathe instead of filling it with performance. You remember them. You can't stop thinking about them, because they had something you've been chasing your whole life and couldn't name. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Weak people do not fear confident people. They fear quiet people. There's a crucial difference. A loud, aggressive, visibly confident person gives you something to respond to. You can match their energy. You can label them as arrogant, as threatening, as compensating for something. You have tools for that. But someone who simply doesn't need you, someone whose inner world is so complete that your approval adds nothing and your disapproval takes nothing, that person breaks every social mechanism you've built. And so they must be destroyed, or at least diminished, before they reveal the emptiness you've been hiding. Most people are performing constantly. Every conversation is an audition, every silence is a threat. Every decision is quietly calibrated to manage what other people think. This isn't conscious. It's terrifying precisely because it isn't. It's the deep architecture of a life built on external validation. And if you've built your entire identity on other people's reactions, then someone who doesn't react correctly is not just different. They're a mirror. And mirrors held up to a frightened person always get smashed. Laozi called this we, non-action, non-striving. It is the most misunderstood concept in all of philosophy because modern minds cannot conceive of power that doesn't advertise itself. We confuse stillness with weakness because we've been trained to equate visibility with think. The person who speaks loudest is leading. We think the person who works the hardest is winning. We think the person who cares the most has the most to offer. But Laozi watched the world with the patience of someone who had stopped needing it to be different. And what he saw was this. The harder you grip, the more slips through. The more you demand to be seen, the less you are. The more you strive, the further the thing you want moves away from you. You've felt this. You've walked into a room trying too hard to be interesting and felt yourself become instantly forgettable. You've chased something desperately and watched it recede with every step. You've argued loudly for your worth and left the conversation feeling worthless. This is not failure of effort. This is the exact and predictable consequence of misunderstanding what power actually is. Real confidence does not move toward approval. It has nowhere it needs to go. And here is where it gets psychologically dark, because the people who fear quiet confidence are not random. They are people who have never felt safe enough to stop performing. They grew up in environments where stillness was dangerous, where being quiet meant being overlooked, dismissed, forgotten, where love was conditional, on behavior, on production, on performance. These people did not choose their hunger for external validation. It was installed in them by circumstances that left no other option. And now they move through the world in a state of constant low-grade terror, scanning every room for signs of their own acceptance. When they encounter someone free of that terror, something shatters inside them that they cannot name. Because your freedom is proof that their prison is self-built, and that is the most unbearable thing a person can witness. This is why quiet confidence provokes such disproportionate reactions. It's not personal. You didn't do anything. You simply stopped doing the things everyone else agreed to keep doing. You stopped over-explaining. You stopped apologizing for your presence. You stopped shrinking yourself to fit the space others were comfortable with. And in doing so, you became a living indictment of everyone who hasn't yet. Laozi said, "Know others, and you have intelligence. Know yourself, and you have wisdom. Overcome others, and you have strength. Overcome yourself, and you have true power." The world teaches us to compete outward, to accumulate status, to build an identity that others can see and measure and confirm. But the Tao, the great underlying current of reality that Laozi pointed toward his entire life, runs in the opposite direction. Inward, downward, into the places no one else is watching. The valley, not the peak. The root, not the branch. And this is what the loud, the reactive, the approval-hungry, the visibly powerful cannot tolerate, because they have spent decades climbing status hierarchies, social circles, professional ladders. They have sacrificed something genuine in themselves to reach a position where others look up at them. And then here you are, not climbing, not competing, not asking for anything. And something about your stillness suggests that maybe the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall the entire time. The threat is not you. The threat is the question you represent without saying a word. There's a particular kind of cruelty reserved for people who become quieter as they grow stronger. The world responds to that quietness with suspicion, with contempt, with manufactured stories about your coldness, your pride, your damage. Because a person who doesn't need to broadcast their pain must be in denial of it. A person who doesn't argue must be weak. A person who lets others speak while they listen must not have anything worth saying. These narratives are not about you. They are panic-dressed as analysis. They are the sound of people trying to drag you back down to a level of noise where they feel in control. And here is the final and most disturbing truth. The person who genuinely frightens the reactive, the insecure, the performance-addicted, is not the one who has conquered their enemies. It is the one who no longer has enemies, because they no longer require anyone else's defeat to feel adequate. That person is impossible to manipulate. They cannot be baited. They cannot be diminished by opinion. They cannot be controlled by the fear of being disliked. They are, in the most ancient and misunderstood sense of the word, free. And freedom, to a person who has built their entire life around chains they chose, is the most threatening thing in the world. Laozi spent his whole life trying to point at water, not to make you strong, to make you understand that you were never meant to be stone. Stone breaks. Water doesn't. Stone demands to be recognized as immovable. Water doesn't care whether you recognize it at all. It was here before you arrived. It will be here long after you've decided what to call it. You already know what quiet confidence feels like. You've touched it in moments you didn't expect. The morning you woke up and didn't care what anyone thought of you. The conversation where you said exactly what you meant without softening it for anyone's comfort. The decision you made alone, in silence, that you knew was right before anyone else could confirm it. You were not performing in those moments. You were simply there. And it felt like the most powerful thing you'd ever experienced. The question is not whether you can become that person permanently. The question is what you're still willing to carry in order to avoid the loneliness of becoming them. Because that is the real cost. Quiet confidence is not painless. It is not accompanied by applause. The moment you stop needing the crowd will tell you that something is wrong with you. And you will have to stand in that judgment, alone, and let it pass through you like wind through bamboo. Not fighting it, Not explaining yourself to it. Simply remaining. That is the Tao. That is the way. Not the absence of struggle. The refusal to add suffering to it by begging the world to understand you. They won't. And you don't need them to. The tree that survives the storm is not the one that resisted the wind. It's the one that knew, without thinking, how to bend.